Hello, my fellow history geeks, and welcome back to part 2 of this small series. So in today's video, I'm gonna talk more about the history of lamps and how they have evolved over the years to what we know as today. The oil lamps started out as curved stone lamps that were found in places that dated all the way back to the 10th millennium BC. The oldest stone oil lamp was found in Lascaux in 1940. In a cave that was inhabited 10,000 years ago to 15,000 years ago. There are some archaeologists that claim that the first shell lamps existed more than 6,000 years ago. They believe that the alabaster shell-shaped lamps were dug up in Sumerian sites dating back to 2600 BC that were imitations of real shell lamps that had been used for a long time. It is generally agreed that the evolution of handmade lamps moved from bowl-shaped to saucer-shaped, then from saucer with a nozzle to a closed bowl with a spout. The oil lamp was used to produce light continuously for a period of time using an oil-based fuel source. The use of oil lamps actually began thousands of years ago and is continued being used to this day today, although their use is less and less common in modern times. The oil lamps work in the same way as a candle does, but with fuel that is at room temperature, so that the container for the oil is required. There is a textile wick that drops down into the oil and is lit at the end, burning the oil as it draws up the wick. They were used as an alternative to candles before the use of electric lights. Starting in 1780, the Adan lamp quickly replaced other oil lamps, still in their basic ancient form. But these were replaced by the kerosene lamp around 1850. In the small towns and rural areas, the latter continued in use well into the 20th century, until such areas were finally electrified and the light bulbs could be used. The sources of fuel for oil lamps include a wide variety of plants. Like nuts, the types of nuts they would use was walnuts, almonds, and kukui, and seeds like sesame, olive, castor, or flax. There were also a wide variety of animal fats like butter, ghee, fish oil, shark liver, whale blubber, or even seal. Camphene, which was a British trade name of a 19th century lamp fuel that was made from purified spirits of turpentine. It was generally prepared by distilling turpentine with quicklime, and it gave off good light. So camphene was made of purified spirits of turpentine and burning fluid, a mixture of turpentine and alcohol, were sold as lamp fuels, which started in the 1830s as the whale oil industry declined. The burning fluid became more expensive during the Civil War, when a federal tax on alcohol was reenacted. The sales of both camphene and the burning fluid decreased in the late 1800s as other sources of lighting, such as kerosene, which was made from petroleum, gas lighting, and electric lighting, began to predominate. During the Chalcolithic Age, the first manufactured pottery all was red, and it appeared in the Chalcolithic. These were of the round bowl type. The Bronze Age lamps were simple wheel-made bowls with a slight pinch on four sides for the wick. While the later lamps, they only had one pinch. These lamps vary in the shape of the rim and the general shape of the bowl and the shape of the base. While during the Intermediate Bronze Age, there was a design with four spouts for wicks appeared during this time. The lamps were made from large bowls with flattened bases for stability and for equally spaced shallow pinches in the rim for wicks, although there were some lamps with only one single pinch have also been found. The four-spout design evolved to provide sufficient light when being fueled with fish or animal oils, which would burn less efficiently than olive oil. During the Middle Bronze Age, the four-wick oil lamps persisted into this period. However, most lamps now only have one wick. In the early period of this time, the pinch is shallow, while later on it becomes more prominent and the mouth protrudes from the lamp's body. While the bases are simple and flay, the crude potter's wheel is introduced, transforming the handmade bowls to a more uniform container. And the saucer style also evolved into a single spout shape. In the late Bronze Age, a more pronounced, deeper single spout is developed, and it's almost closed on the sides. The shape starts to be more triangle, deeper, and larger. All lamps are now wheel-made, with a simple and usually flat base. During the Iron Age, lamp rims became wider and flatter, with a deeper and higher spout. The tip of the spout became more upright in contrast to the rest of the rim. The lamps became more variable in shape and distribution, although some remain similar to lamps from the late Bronze Age. But in addition, there were other forms that evolved, such as small lamps with a flat base and larger lamps with a round base. The later form continues into the Second Iron Age. While in the later Iron Age, variant forms appear. One common type is small, with a wide rim and a wide base. Another type is a small, shallow bowl with a thick and high discus base. Like in Judaism, the lamps appear in the Torah and other Jewish sources as a symbol of lighting the way for the righteous, the wise, and for love and other positive values. The fire was often described as being destructive. Light was given a positive spiritual meaning. The oil lamp and its light were important household items, and this may explain their symbolism. The oil lamps were used for many spiritual rituals. The temple menorah, a ritual 7-branched oil lamp, was used in the Second Temple, which forms the center of the Chanukah story. While in Christianity, there are several references to oil lamps, like in the New Testament. In the Eastern Orthodox Church, Roman Catholic Church, and the Eastern Catholic Church's oil lamps, which the Greek, candili, Church Slavonic, lampada, are still used both on the holy table or the altar, and to illuminate icons on the iconostasis and around the temple, or the church building. The Orthodox Christians will also use the oil lamps in their homes to illuminate their icon corner. Traditionally, the sanctuary lamp in an Orthodox church is an oil lamp. It's lit by the bishop when the church is consecrated, and ideally it should burn perpetually thereafter. The oil lamp would burn in all of these lamps, and it's traditionally olive oil. The oil lamps are also referenced as a symbol throughout the New Testament, including in the parable of the 10 virgins. While in Hinduism, the oil lamps are commonly used in the Hindu temples, as well as in home shrines. The lamps were generally used in temples. They were circular with places for 5 wicks. They are made of metal and either suspended on a chain or screwed onto a pedestal. There will usually be at least 1 lamp in each shrine, and the main shrine may contain several. There would usually only be 1 wick lit, with all 5 burning only on festive occasions. The oil lamps are used in the Hindu ritual of Ordi. In the home shrine, the style of lamp is usually different and only contains 1 wick. There is usually a piece of metal that forms the back of the lamp, which has a picture of a Hindu deity embossed on it. But in many houses, the lamp would burn all day, while in other homes, the lamp is lit at sundown. The lamp in the home shrines is supposed to be lit before any other lights are turned on at night. A handheld oil lamp or incense sticks or lit from the lamp are also used during the Hindu puja ceremony. In the north part of India, a 5-wick lamp is used, usually fueled with ghee. And on special occasions, various other lamps may be used for puja, the most elaborate having several tiers of wicks. While in the south part of India, there are a few types of oil lamps that are common in temples and traditional rituals. There are some of the smaller ones that are used for offerings as well. Some of the oil lamps are, which is a brass lamp with a depiction of Goddess Sri Lakshmi over the back piece. They are usually small and they have only 1 wick, which is a tall brass or bronze lamp on a stand where the wicks are placed at a certain height. A brass or bronze lamp in the form of a lady holding a vessel with her hands. This type of lamp comes in different sizes, from very small to almost life-size. But there are also large stone versions of this lamp in Hindu temples and shrines of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Kerala, especially at the base of columns and flanking the entrance of temples. They have only 1 wick. The thuku vilaku is a brass or bronze lamp hanging from a chain, often with multiple wicks. It's an ornamental brass lamp made out of a series of diyas, which is a handicraft product which is exclusively made by the Pathar or Kamalar community in Nakarcoil, Tamil Nadu, India. The lamps from Persia were large with thin sides and a deep pinch that would flatter the mouth and make it protrude outward. Okay, so just some background of gas lighting is that the prior to use of gaseous fuels for the early lightning fuels consisted of olive oil, beeswax, fish oil, whale oil, sesame oil, nut oil, or other similar substances, which were all liquid fuels. These were mostly commonly used fuels up until the late 18th century. The whale oil was especially widely used for lighting in European cities, such as London, all the way through the early 19th century. There are Chinese records that date back 1,700 years that indicate the use of natural gas in homes for lighting and heating. The natural gas was transported by means of bamboo pipes to homes. During the spring and autumn period, the ancient Chinese made the first practical use of natural gas for lighting purposes around 500 BC, in which they used bamboo pipelines to transport both brine and natural gas for many miles, such as the ones in Zhejiang salt mines. The public illumination was preceded by centuries of development and widespread adoption of gas lighting. In 1417, Sir Henry Barton, Lord Mayor of London, ordained lanterns with lights to be hanged out on the winter evening betwixt Hallowtide and Candlemassie. The first time that Paris was illuminated was by an order that was issued in 1524, and in the windows of all houses that faced the streets, and in the beginning of the 16th century. The inhabitants were ordered to keep lights burning in the windows of all houses that faced the streets. In 1668, when some regulations were made for improving the streets of London, the residents were reminded to hang out their lanterns at the usual time, and in 1690, an order was made to hang out a light and lamp every single night at nightfall, from Michaelmas till Christmas. There was an act of the Common Council in 1716 that all housekeepers, whose houses faced any street, lane, or passage, were required to hang out every dark night. There has to be one or more lights to burn from 6 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And if they didn't do it, there would be a penalty of 1 shilling as a fine for failing to do so. The accumulating and escaping gases were known originally among the coal miners for their adverse effect rather than their useful characteristics. Coal miners describe 2 types of gases, one that's called the choke damp and the other one called fire damp. In 1667, a paper detailing the effects of these gases was entitled A Description of a Well and Earth in Lancashire Taking Fire by a Candle Approaching to It. Imparted by Thomas Shirley, as an eyewitness. There was a British clergyman and scientist named Stephen Hales who had experimented with the actual distillation of coal, and it obtained flammable liquid. He reported his results in the first volume of his Vegetable Statics, which was published in 1726. There he wrote 158 grains, or 10.2 grams of Newcastle coal. He stated that he obtained 180 cubic inches, or 2.9 liter of gas, which weighed 51 grains, or 3.3 grams, being nearly 1/3 of the whole. His results gained attention decades later as the unique chemical properties of various gases became understood through the work of Joseph Black, Henry Cavendish, Alessandro Volta, and others. In 1733, the Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society was published by Sir James Lowther, which detailed some properties of coal gas, including its flammability. Lowther demonstrated the principal properties of coal gas to different members of the Royal Society. Lowther showed that the gas retained its flammability after storage for some time. The demonstration didn't result in identification of utility. Minister and experimentalist John Clayton referred to coal gas as the spirit of coal. He discovered its flammability by accident. The spirit that he isolated from coal caught on fire by coming in contact with a candle as it escaped from a fracture in one of his distillation vessels. He stored the coal gas in bladders, and at times he entertained his friends by demonstrating the flammability of the gas. He published his findings in Philosophical Transactions. It took around 200 years for gas to become accessible for commercial use. A Flemish alchemist named Jan Bautista van Helmont was the first person to formally recognize gas as a state of matter. Jan would go on to identify several types of gases, including carbon dioxide. Over 100 years later, in 1733, Sir James Lowther had some of his miners working on a water pit for his mine. While digging the pit, they had hit a pocket of gas. Lowther took a sample of the gas and took it home to do some experiments. While doing the experiment, he took notes. In his note he wrote, "The said air being put into a bladder and tied close may be carried away and kept some days, and being afterwards pressed gently through a small pipe into the flame of a candle, will take fire, and burn at the end of the pipe as long as the bladder is gently pressed to feed the flame. And when taken from the candle after it is so lighted, it will continue burning till there is no more air left in the bladder to supply the flame." He was definitely onto something. He basically found out the principle behind gas lighting. Later in the 18th century, William Murdoch stated that the gas obtained by distillation from coal, peat, wood and other inflammable substances burnt with great brilliancy upon being set fire to. By conducting it through tubes, it might be employed as an economical substitute for lamps and candles. He first invented a lantern with a gas-filled bladder that was attached to a jet. He would use this to walk home at night. After seeing how well this worked, he then decided to light his home with gas. And in 1797, he had installed gas lighting in his new home, as well at the workshop where he worked. This work was of a large scale, and he next experimented to find better ways of producing, purify, and burning the gas, and the foundation had been laid for companies to start producing gas and other investors to start playing with ways of using this new technology. Murdoch was the first to exploit the flammability of gas for the practical application of lighting. Murdoch worked for Matthew Boulton and James Watt at their Soho Foundry steam engine works in Birmingham, England. During the early 1790s, while overseeing the use of his company's steam engines in tin mining in Cornwall, Murdoch then began experimenting with various types of gas and finally settled on coal gas as the most effective. He first lit his own house in Redruth, Cornwall in 1792, and in 1798 he used gas to light the main building of the Soho Foundry. In 1802, lit the outside in a public display of gas lighting, the lights astonishing the local population. One of the employees at the Soho Foundry, Samuel Clegg, saw the potential of this new form of lighting. Samuel left his job to set up his own gas lighting business. He called it the Gas Light and Coke Company. A thermal lamp using gas distilled from wood was patented in 1799 by the German inventor Friedrich Windsor, or Frederick Albert Windsor. He was the first person to patent coal gas lighting in 1804. Just 3 years prior, a guy named Philippe Lebon of Paris had also used gas lights to illuminate his house and gardens, and was considering how to light all of Paris. In 1820, Paris adopted the gas street lighting. In 1804, Dr. Henry had delivered a course of lectures on chemistry at Manchester, in which he showed the mode of producing gas from coal, and the facility, and the advantage of its use. Dr. Henry had analyzed the composition and investigated the properties of carbureted hydrogen gas, or methane. His experiments were numerous and accurate and made upon a variety of substances, having obtained the gas from wood, which are peat, different kinds of coal, oil, wax, etc. He also quantified the intensity of the light from each source. In 1806, the Phillips and Lee factory and a portion of Chapel Street in Salford, Lancashire were lit by gas. It was thought to be the first use of gas street lighting in the world. An inventor named Josiah Pemberton had for some time been experimenting on the nature of gas. He was a resident of Birmingham. His attention may have been roused by the exhibition at Soho. Around 1806, he exhibited gas lights in a variety of forms and with great brilliance at the front of his factory in Birmingham. In 1808, Josiah constructed an apparatus applicable for several uses for Benjamin Cook, a manufacturer of brass tubes, gilt toys, and other articles. In 1808, Murdoch presented to the Royal Society a paper entitled Account of the Application of Gas from Coal to Economical Purposes, in which Murdoch described his successful application of coal to light the extensive establishment of Messrs. For this paper, he was awarded Count Rumford's Gold Medal. Murdoch's statements threw great light on the comparative advantage of gas and candles, and contained much useful information on the expenses of production and management. Despite the history being uncertain, David Melville has been credited with the first house and street lighting in the U.S. and in either 1805 or 1806 in Newport, Rhode Island. In 1809, the first application was made to Parliament to incorporate a company in order to accelerate the process, but the bill still failed to pass. So in 1810, the application was renewed by the same parties, and though some opposition was encountered and considerable expense incurred, and the bill passed, but it wasn't with great alterations. And the London and Westminster Gas, Light and Coke Company was established. Just less than 2 years later, on December 31, 1813, Westminster Bridge was lit by gas. Samuel Clegg obtained the patent for his horizontal rotative retort, his apparatus for purify the coal gas with cream of lime, and for his rotative gas meter and self-acting governor by 1816. Among the economic impacts of gas lighting was much longer work hours in factories. This was particularly important in Great Britain during the winter months, when nights are significantly longer. The factories could even work continuously over 24 hours, which resulted in increased production. Following successful commercialization, gas lighting spread to other countries. All gas appeared in the field as a rival of coal gas. In 1815, John Taylor patented an apparatus for the decomposition of wool by the display of the patent apparatus at Apothecaries' Hall by Taylor and Martineau. While in England, the first place outside London to have gas lighting was Preston, Lancashire, in 1816. This was due to the Preston Gaslight Company run by revolutionary Joseph Dunn, who found the most improved way of brighter gas lighting. The parish church there was the first religious building to be lit by gas lighting. In Bristol, a gas light company was founded on December 15, 1815, under the supervision of the engineer John Brelliat. Extensive works were conducted in 1816 to 1817 to build a gas holder, mains, and street lights. Many of the principal streets in the center of the city, as well as nearby houses, had switched to gas lighting by the end of 1817. In America, it was Seth Bemis who lit his factory with gas illumination from 1812 to 1813. The use of gas lights in Rembrandt Peale's museum in Baltimore in 1816 was a great success. Baltimore was the first American city with gas street lights. Peale's Gas Light Company of Baltimore, on February 7, 1817, lit its first street lamp at Market and Lemon Streets. The first private residence in the U.S. illuminated by gas has been variously identified as that of David Melville, as described above, or of William Henry, who was a coppersmith at 200 Lombard Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in 1816. In 1817, at the 3 stations of the Chartered Gas Company in London, 25 chaldrons of coal were carbonized daily, producing 300,000 cubic feet of gas, which is the equivalent of 8.50 ohm. This supplied gas lamps equal to 75.00 argon lamps, each yielding the light of candles. At the City Gas Works in Dorset Street, Blackfriars, 3 chaldrons of coal were carbonized each day, providing the gas equivalent of 9,000 argon lamps. So around 28 chaldrons of coal were carbonized daily and 84.00 lights supplied by only those 2 companies. And at this period, the principal difficulty in gas manufacture was purification. Mr. David Wilson of Dublin patented a method for purify the coal gas by means of the chemical action of ammoniacal gas. Another plan was devised by Reuben Phillips of Exeter, who patented the purification of coal gas by the use of dry lime. In 1818, G. Holworthy patented a method of purify it by passing the gas in a highly condensed state, which through the iron retorts heated to a dark red. In 1820, a Swedish inventor named Johann Patrik Ljungström had developed a gas lighting with copper apparatuses and chandeliers of ink, brass, and crystal, reportedly one of the first such public installations of gas lighting in the region, which enhanced as a triumphal arch for the city gate for a royal visit of Charles XIV, John of Sweden, in 1820. By 1823, there were numerous towns and cities throughout Britain that were lit by gas. Gas light cost up to 75% less than all lamps or candles, which helped to accelerate its development and deployment. In 1824, the English Association for Gas Lighting on the Continent, with a sizable business producing gas for several cities in mainland Europe, including Berlin, was established, with Sir William Congreve, 2nd Baronet, as a general manager. In 1839, the invention of the Bude light provided a brighter and more economical lamp. By 1859, gas lighting was to be found all over Britain, and about 1,000 gas works had sprung up to meet the demand for the new fuel. The brighter lighting which gas provided allowed people to read more easily and for longer, and this helped to stimulate literacy and learning, speeding up the Second Industrial Revolution. In 1891, the gas mantle was invented by the Austrian chemist named Karl Auer von Welschbach. This eliminated the need for special illuminating gas, or a synthetic mixture of hydrogen and hydrocarbon gases produced by destructive distillation of bituminous coal or peat to get bright shining flames. The acetylene was also used from around 1898 for gas lighting on a smaller scale. The illuminating gas was used for gas lighting as it produces a much brighter light than natural or water gas. The illuminating gas was much less toxic than other forms of coal gas, but less could be produced from a given quantity of coal. The experiments with distilling coal were described by John Clayton in 1684. George Dixon's pilot plant exploded in 1790, setting back the production of illuminating gas a few years. The first commercial application was in a Manchester cotton mill in 1806, and in 1901, studies of the defoliant effect of leaking gas pipes led to the discovery that ethylene is a plant hormone. Throughout the 19th century and into the first decades of the 20th century, the gas was manufactured by the gasification of coal. Later in the 19th century, natural gas began to replace coal gas, first in the U.S., and then in other parts of the world. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, coal gas was used until the early 1970s. It took many years of development and testing before gas lighting for the stage was commercially available. The gas technology was then installed in just about every major theater in the world. But the gas lighting was short-lived because the electric light bulb soon followed. In the 19th century, the gas stage lighting went from a crude experiment to the most popular way of lighting theatrical stages. In 1804, Frederick Winslow first demonstrated the way to use gas light the stage in London at the Lyceum Theatre. Although the demonstration and all the lead research were being done in gas-lit London, in 1816 at the Chestnut Street Theatre in Philadelphia was the earliest gas-lit theatre in world. In 1815, a German polymath named Alexander von Humboldt, who worked for the German Bureau of Mines, had concerns for the health and welfare of the miners and invented a kind of a respirator and for lamps of different constructions suitable for employment in various circumstances. The respirator was to prevent the inhaling of injurious gases and to supply the miner with good air, while the lamps were constructed to burn in the most inflammable kind of fire damp without igniting the gas. They were the forerunners of Davy's later invention and were frequently made use of by the miners. Davy's invention was preceded by that of an Irish doctor at Bishop Wearmouth named William Reed Clanny. He had read a paper to the Royal Society in May of 1813. The more cumbersome Clanny safety lamp was so successfully tested at Harrington Mill that he won medals from the Royal Society of Arts. But despite his lack of scientific knowledge, engine wright George Stephenson devised a lamp in which the air entered via tiny holes through where the flames of the lamp couldn't pass. Just a month before Davy presented his design to the Royal Society, George had demonstrated his own lamp to the two witnesses by taking it down to Killingworth Colliery and holding it in front of a fissure from which the fire damp was issued. While the first trial of a Davy lamp with a wire sieve was at Hebburn Colliery on January 9, 1816, a letter from Davy, which was intended to be kept private, describing his findings and various suggestions for a safety lamp, was made public at a meeting in Newcastle on November 3, 1815. A paper describing the lamp was formally presented at the Royal Society meeting in London on November 9th, and for it, Davy was awarded the Society's Rumford Medal. However, Davy's lamp differed from Stephenson's in that the flame was surrounded by a screen of gauze, whereas Stephenson's prototype lamp had a perforated place, which was contained in a glass cylinder. In 1817, the Lyceum, Drury Lane, and Covent Garden theaters were all lit by gas. Gas was brought into the building by miles of rubber tubing from outlets in the floor called water joints, which carried the gas to border lights and wing lights. But before it was distributed, the gas came through a central distribution point called a gas table, which varied the brightness by regulating the gas supply, and the gas table, which actually allowed the control of separate parts of the stage. And thus it became the first stage, or switchboard. By the 1850s, gas lighting in theaters had spread practically all over the US and Europe. Some of the largest installations of gas lighting were in large auditoriums, like the Theatre du Châtelet, which was built in 1862. In 1875, the new Paris Opera was constructed. Its lighting system contained more than 28 miles or 45 kilometers of gas piping, and its gas table had no fewer than 88 stopcocks, which controlled 960 gas jets. The theatre that used the most gas lighting was Astley's Equestrians Amphitheatre in London. And according to the Illustrated London News, everywhere white and gold meets the eye. And about 200.00 gas jets add to the glittering effect of the auditorium. Such a blaze of light and splendor has scarcely ever been witnessed, even in dreams. In the early 20th century, most cities in North America and Europe had gaslit streets, and most railway station platforms had gas lights too. However, around 1880, gas lighting for streets and train stations began giving way to high voltage. The voltage was between 3,000 to 6,000 volts. The direct current and alternating current arc lighting systems. During this time period, it also saw the development of the first electric power utility designed for indoor use. The new system was invented by Thomas Edison and was designed to function similarly to the gas lighting. For reasons of safety and simplicity, it used direct current, or DC for short, at a relatively low 110 volts to light incandescent light bulbs. The voltage in wires steadily declined as distance increases, and at this low voltage power plants needed to be within around 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers of the lamps. While this voltage drop problem made DC distribution relatively expensive and gas lighting retained widespread usage with new buildings, and sometimes constructed with dual systems of gas piping and electrical wiring connected to each room, and to diversify the power sources for lighting. During the development of the new alternating current power transmission systems in the 1880s and the 1890s, by companies such as Grants and AG in Europe and Westinghouse Electric and Thomson Houston in the US, which solved the voltage distance problem by using high transmission line voltages and transformers to drop the voltage for distribution for indoor lighting. The alternating current technology overcame many of the limitations of direct current, which enabled the rapid growth of reliable, low-cost electrical power networks, which finally spelled the end of the widespread usage of gas lighting. Well, that's it for today's video. I hope that you have enjoyed today's video. If you have, please like and subscribe. If you have any topic that you want me to cover, then please let me know down in the description box down below.